Right. Next big point to cover in our data-driven career fundamentals in terms of expectations and that sea of expectations is reliability. Again, the ecosystem of expectations and reliability is one of the most important points that you can achieve. And I will explain that in just a moment. So remember, view these things within the context of not only what you expect or what you think others expect of you, but all the expectations. And the idea is to discover that, leverage them, and use it to accelerate your career. All right, so I call this the safe bet. The safe bet, right? It's about the math. So, what's the math? The equation is the probability that you're going to be successful, and that determines your consistency. So, essentially, if out of 100 times you're successful 51 of those 100 times, you're more probable to be successful than not. And if you can increase that number over time, that increases your probability of success. Um, and ultimately, this is important. This expectation is somewhat universal. I've talked about this in other videos. There's been studies done on this. One group called GH Smart, interviewing 18,000 CEOs and board members. Reliability and consistency has been the number one thing that people that have the greatest influence in your career and open up executive opportunities are going to expect to see. It's one of the common norms, especially at higher leadership roles, that the ecosystem's going to expect in terms of the result. So what happens if you don't have reliability in terms of success in your delivery? Like missing this shift in your mindset can ultimately put you in a position where you're just focused on prior accomplishments that could be great, but they're kind of from the glory days. And you can't keep on building off the same prior accomplishments throughout your careers because you will become further and further distant from those accomplishments and in expectations around skills that should have been developed since you've achieved those accomplishments. And, it's also puts you in this position of like, you just remain static in the eyes of the people that have great influence on your career throughout jobs and ultimately results in what I call these cold raises. So you can get this incremental increase every year, every couple of years, 2, 3, 4%, doesn't beat inflation. And it's defined as a cost of living uh, raise. And in my mind, I add D because that's kind of like symbolic depth in terms of career. You're slightly behind inflation. So essentially, you're making less money every year. You don't want to be in that position. You really want to have the opportunity to own your career. So one of the key expectations is this consistency. So leverage it throughout the entire ecosystem. So essentially it's going to come down to this like perception of growth or reality of growth. If you keep on relying on that one accomplishment, telling that same story, to be like, yes, you did have that great accomplishment, but have you grown since then? What else have you done? So what does it mean to be consistent and to ultimately be reliable in terms of success? It's, it's beyond saying I delivered what I promised to deliver and that you're dependable. Okay, you said you would do that, you did that, that's great. But the expectation is that pretty much anybody at any level should be doing that. And your CGKs or your career gatekeepers, they want consistent success. And ultimately, the big bow to wrap on this entire data-driven career approach is the consistency and exceeding expectations. And that's what we want to define as reliable from this program approach. And it creates a series of accomplishments over time that you stack, and it seems like there's this progression and growth, which creates momentum. People love to see trajectory because then they think that that trajectory is going to continue with them. And this process in totality ultimately allows you to set the direction and ownership for your career and really drives that conversion of your career gatekeepers and have heavy influence on your career to become the career advocates and articulate your leadership brand even when you're not in the room. All right. So throughout this program and the other two more advanced programs, this concept of reliability and consistent success is an overarching one. So keep it in mind. Keep it keep the other things we do within the context of this. This is ultimately what we want to achieve, and the type of success that we want to have is to exceed the expectations within our ecosystem.